to a number of other people. Now, for me, the police as an institution have really had a lot of questions to answer in terms of transparency and accountability.
Transparency and accountability. John Tully, do you recognise, do you accept that Britain's police have some way to go before they're really communicating with the people around them?
I think an enormous amount of work's been done since the mid-80s when we had previous serious disturbances, strange enough, in Tottenham and Broadwater Farm, etc. Enormous steps have been taken by the police service since then to increase our interaction with communities. We have safer neighbourhood teams now in every ward in London. An enormous amount of effort has gone into schools liaison and engagement with the community generally. And I think part of our call recently has been to have a review of the whole criminal justice system, not just into the police, which of course is a critical part of that, but into the judiciary, the court system, the Crown Prosecution Service, because I see Mr Cameron introducing new offences or talking about new legislation around disorder, when in fact there is sufficient legislation on hand at the moment. If it's properly utilised by the prosecutors and determined by the judges at the end of the day, we can sentence people to serious lengths of time in prison, and that's what needs to be concentrated on, rather than quick sound bites like zero tolerance, which we don't really know what that means at the moment.
And yet, as far as the police activity is concerned, everyone wants a police force that understands the community it serves and knows where things are coming from, and yet we had a situation where the police were virtually bystanders in Tottenham on the first day of the riots, and then when reinforcements were brought in, we had police from the West Country chasing local youths down the alleys of Ealing and Shepherd's Bush. I mean, it wasn't exactly effective at once, was it?
I think it was difficult. It was a fast-moving and dynamic situation which originated out of a peaceful demonstration outside Tottenham Police Station. There were some issues around information which the IPCC were responsible for. There may have been some difficulties around communicating that with the family, and things did deteriorate. But they were quickly addressed by senior management by bringing in more police officers, as you have suggested. But it was a very dynamic and fast-moving incident, and I believe my members, who are the people on the streets facing those petrol bombs and those bricks, did a fantastic job in the circumstances.
Symeon Brown, we have a moment here in Britain where everyone's attention is focused on these problems one way or the other, which means there is a real motivation to make some progress and some change. What would you like to see members of Parliament doing now in their constituencies to understand better what needs to be done and to come up with solutions that satisfy the local people that are looking for them?
I think so far there have been two areas in which there have been great rhetoric on, and those are the areas that I would like to build upon. Those areas of our family support or the socially excluded area, and those areas are also institutional reform. I think many of the institutions that our state, our democratic state, is built on have really been undermined, and they're in need of great reform to be a lot more accountable and a lot more transparent. And we're talking about all of them, from Parliament to the police to the media, all of them. In the area of family, it's very interesting, the rhetoric and the lip service that has been paid by our government. However, if they're really going to support families, then this includes supporting Sure Start, which has faced cuts. This includes a living wage to allow people to work, but not work crazy hours where they're not able to support families. So supporting families goes a lot further than really scapegoating single mothers. It really crosses borders into economic policy. We also need to see a lot more in terms of supporting jobs. Now, what we see there is a trade-off between the austerity of George Osborne and David Cameron talking about real support. Real support costs money. Now, are they willing to put that investment there? Now, this is where the real question for our government really begins to come into play.
John Tully, listening to that all sounds very solid. The police say that their backroom officers aren't just backroom officers, that they were involved in child protection, they're involved in domestic violence. We are getting to the point where the police are part of the things that Symeon Brown is talking about, communication with local communities. Are you satisfied that that change in the police is evolving? We've got an officer in Strathclyde in our report recently saying youth crime is evolving. We need to evolve with it.
Absolutely, and we should. I mean, I commend the work that's going on in Strathclyde, and we absolutely should move with the times and progress and develop. But I think that's a very difficult area of development around budgets, because we're facing 20% cuts. the very people who are doing that sort of work, engaging with ex-gang members or indeed current gang members, wouldn't be classed as frontline officers. You know, you've mentioned domestic violence, and there's a long list of other work which is done by officers who are classed as back office when, you know, their jobs are crucial. If we lose 20% of our policing budgets, 2,000 officers from London will disappear off the streets. It's impossible not to affect the front line. I would call upon the Home Secretary to back up what she said only today around listening to what communities want their police services to do. There was a recent survey which said 71% of the public wanted more police in London. If she continues to maintain her cuts, the police of London won't get that. OK, John Tully, thanks so much. Symeon Brown, we're running out of time, but just briefly, do you think this will end up being an opportunity missed?
I think I'm very, very worried that the discourse that we're having is going away from the real issues. And I think that what I would really support is a real review into what we saw happen last week. And that review has been completely evaded by this current government.
Symeon Brown and John Tully, thank you both for joining us this afternoon.